single project can take years to complete, whether that's because a simulation is particularly tricky, you need months to collect data, or proof is really hard to discover. Despite all of this work, you only have a few small windows in order to show the world what you've done, and you really don't want to blow it. So a little bit over a week ago, I attended the Southeast Analysis meeting. This is a small conference that is focused on the things that I do. So this year I was asked to change my talk from a talk to about 15 people for 20 minutes to a talk to the entire conference for 30 minutes because somebody else canceled their semi-plenary talk and they needed somebody to fill in. And that meant that I had to change my entire talk so a more general audience could understand it. But I only had like a couple of days and maybe a few snatches of time to actually get the whole thing done and reformed.
So my talk at this conference was switched to a semi-plenary at the last minute. And so I have a lot of adjustments to make because I'm not just talking to 20 people who are going to show up to hear what I say, but I'm talking to the entire conference. We'll see how this goes. I have 5 hours to get this done. The talk is at 10. It's 5:20, so I probably have more like 4 hours or less.
So here are 5 general principles that can help you make a good talk. And since I'm a mathematician, I want to lead with this one possibly controversial statement. A good talk should have no proofs. Yes, I'm serious. Even at a mathematics conference, everyone is just going to fall asleep or start checking their email. If the proof itself is your contribution, then you can include a sketch that talks about it from a high level, but don't dive into the deep details. And another option is to demonstrate it on a toy problem.
So I'm getting a little too distracted. So I'm going to go downstairs. There's a little public work area that I can get into. I have less than 3 hours before I go to my talk. So yeah, it's like 7:15 now.
A good talk should start at a fairly low level. If you can manage it, possibly even start with an ELI 5. You want to find a problem that is connected to your work, but that can be appreciated by as large an audience as possible. A great example of this can be found in the book, A PhD is Not Enough. He worked specifically on problems relating to quantum mechanics and the atmosphere, but he opens his talk with every parent eventually is faced with the question, why is the sky blue? Your goal is to find a problem that everyone can connect to. It also gives your audience a lifeline for later when they lose the thread of the talk, which will eventually happen. I mean, when people talk about someone like Richard Feynman, he was able to explain all sorts of really complicated science concepts at a very, very low level. And it helps everybody understand. And you can tell just how much people appreciated it because of how many different interviews he had with places like the BBC and PBS. Because everybody just wanted to hear him talk about his job. And you want to get to the point where everybody wants to come to you so that they can hear about your work. And the best way to do that is explain it like you're talking to a 5-year-old. This also means that everyone can leave your talk and tell someone something about it, even if they didn't understand the deeper aspects of your work. If it can't be made so that a 5-year-old can understand it, then that's fine, but an undergrad should be able to understand it. For a 30-minute talk, think the first 10 minutes are for undergrads, then the next 10 minutes are for graduate students, and the last 10 minutes are for experts. People will be impressed if you can make your work accessible to a large audience. It's really not easy to do this. You can save your hard-hitting results for the latter half of the lecture when only the experts are still hanging on anyway. Now that you have the problem set up, it's time to start explaining what other people have done on this problem. This should give the audience the relevant background necessary to understand the difficulty of the problem. It should also display the figures working on the problem, and ultimately, it will frame your own contributions. If you have to cut some of the history to get to your point on time, then that is okay. Make sure you don't discard it altogether. So thank you so much for watching this far. And if you liked the video, please go ahead and drop a like. That will really help me out. And if you haven't already, then please consider subscribing. I try to talk about academics and mathematics and also had to throw in a few fun videos here and there. And I'm really happy to have you here. So why don't we go ahead and get back to the video. Now it's all up to you and your work. Talk about your results that were set up by the background runner you provided. And be sure to reference your papers when you can. If you haven't actually published any papers, but have submitted the manuscripts, try to get them up on archive before the talk so that your audience can look them up while the talk is still fresh on their mind. Now, when you take classes like analysis, you are told that you shouldn't use pictures. In a talk, use them whenever you can. It helps to break up your slides, which might be all text, and a nicely designed figure can communicate more in a few seconds than what you could in a few minutes with just words. In my talk that I'll have coming up in a second, you will see that I collected a couple of videos that are relevant to the things I'm actually talking about. Some are ones that I took myself, while others are actually just stock footage that I'll replace later when I can actually get my own videos of the same ideas. You should also think about having a re-engagement point in your talk, depending on how long it is. This is somewhere in your talk when you can help the audience with a mental reset.
And now for something completely different.
Either dropping back down to an ELI 5 for a minute or changing topics slightly to grab the attention of a different segment of your audience. This can be as simple as taking the theoretical discussion that you've been diving into and showing how it works on your toy example that you gave in the very beginning. This can help bring back audience members that started to doze off in the middle of your talk. Then to wrap up your talk, you should tell people how to find you and make sure that you acknowledge your collaborators and funding sources if you didn't at the beginning of the talk. And I also put a QR code in my slides that send people here to my YouTube channel. But that could also lead to, say, your personal webpage. After all of this, the big thing you need to do is practice your talk. If you are new to giving talks, this means giving a talk 3 or 4 times in front of a critical audience of your peers. They can help you tune it up and it will become obvious where you're not being as clear as you thought you were. Now, on the day of the talk, I usually skip the talks that are right before mine. This gives me time to review my intro and to honestly calm my nerves. This is also when you want to make sure that all of your technology is working as expected. Do you have your dongles for your HDMI? Did you bring a spare HDMI cable just in case they didn't have one? Do you have your laser pointer and your slide clicker? I connect my iPhone to my tablet via Bluetooth to move through Keynote. So I wanted to make sure that that worked. I also knew that I wanted to record this talk, so I made sure that I had a fresh battery in my GoPro and that my audio recording app on my phone was actually working properly. The microphone I usually use is a Rode Wireless Go 2, this one right here. But since that room uses a wireless microphone already, the radio waves from my Rode would cause interference, so I picked up a cheap wired mic for this round. Because my talk was changed at the last minute, I only finished it the morning of the talk. So I had time to run through it only once in my hotel room, and even then, I could only get through my introduction. I was really nervous going in. This conference was a Southeast analysis meeting. It's my home conference, and these are my people. I had already spent several days hanging out with people that I've known for more than a decade, and I actually got to meet a lot of new, younger researchers that came on during the COVID era. This was a great group of people, and I knew if I could just keep it together, the talk would go well. I actually hucked down a chocolate bar to calm my nerves, and then I dove into it. Let's see how it went. So I think the video actually turned out okay. If you want to see how it turned out, then I have a link right here where you can check it out. Otherwise, I want to thank you so much for watching this video and making it this far. And otherwise, I hope you have a great day.
More nervous than I expected I would be. I came here expecting to do a 20-minute talk. And then on the plane here, apparently there was cancellation for one of the semi-plenaries, and I got a note saying, hey, can you give a semi-plenary? I'm like, yeah, I guess.